Israel has, thwarted and will thwart the nuclear ambitions of these countries, then Israel once again is doing a service to the world, and the world may take them a while, but they ought to say thank you. Once they're done with me, you're next. And this is the bit which often parts of the world in the Western world either don't want to see or don't see, is that this is about a different way of life, and it's about not just Jews. Jews are in the front line. Others are not far behind.
Today, we're joined by Lord Stuart Polak, a life peer in the British House of Lords and one of the UK's most outspoken advocates for confronting the threat posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. For years, he's led calls for the IRGC to be formally designated as a terror organization in Britain. As missiles fly, alliances shift, and Western democracies grapple with how to respond, Lord Polak brings a unique perspective on why this war is not just Israel's fight, but a fight for the security and values of the West. Lord Polak, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. Good morning.
I want to get your immediate reaction. How do you view this conflict between Israel and Iran?
Well, I think we're all being well at the end game of something which has been going on for a very long time. Everybody knows quite clearly. Well, I say everybody knows, but the problem is not everybody knows. We know that Iran is the ringmaster, and the Iranian regime, whether it's supporting of Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. By the way, I don't know why every terrorist organization begins with an H, but Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah. But everybody knows, or should know, that the Iranians are the ringmasters here, the Iranian regime, and everybody wants to be nicey and not deal with it. Finally, it took, after many years, and the Prime Minister of Israel has been talking about this for a very long time, something had to be done. Now, the conversations in the House of Lords, even last night, and the minister is talking about de-escalation, and he's talking about, let's sit down like big people and negotiate and talk. They just don't realize that you can't sit and negotiate with terrorists. So like Israel can't be expected to sit and negotiate with Hamas, who just wants to kill us or kill everybody. So you can't do that. And so they're saying, oh, no, you need to calm down. Well, they're only saying that. It's only a position of dealing with something because Israel has acted. And I think there's a stark difference, as I said in the House of Lords last night, between what Israel has done, which is the targeting of infrastructure in relation to military defense and nuclear facilities. And you compare that to what the Iranians are doing. And you're there in Jerusalem, and I'm sure you've been in your mamad and you've been in your shelters, because they don't care. By the way, they don't care if they kill a few Arabs along the way too. So you're dealing, you can't negotiate with people in the way that if Britain was negotiating with France or Germany today. And so the fact is, we're in a position now where Israel has acted, and no doubt probably in footballing terms, as a hat trick. When I'm old enough to remember the 1981 Iraq, and then the Syrian, and now the Iranian. And if Israel has, thwarted and will thwart the nuclear ambitions of these countries, then Israel once again is doing a service to the world, and the world may take them a while, but they ought to say thank you.
What would have happened if Israel hadn't attacked Iran?
Israel can't take the chance and wait until they've put nuclear warheads on 15 ballistic missiles and said, well, now what we're going to do. So what Israel has done is entirely the right thing, not just the people of Israel. And as I said last night, not just for the people of Israel, but also for the people of Iran. The vast majority of the people of Iran, and there's no argument with the people of Iran, who just want to get back to pre-1978 sort of relations with Israel, and hopefully that will happen. And so Israel has done the right thing. Why wait till you're about to be killed before you fight back? What Israel has done, and it's quite clear what they're doing. So those sort of criticisms I won't accept, and I think you'll find that majority of right-thinking people will support Israel in its action.
Why is it so critical for Western nations to recognize that Israel is not just fighting the war against Iran on behalf of Israel for the security of Israel, but it's also fighting the war of the West? This concept of the West is next has been repeated throughout this war, but it's always been in terms of Iran's proxy groups, whether it's Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, but the head of the snake has always been Iran. Why is it not just a war for Israel, but also for the West?
The right-thinking people in the West do understand that. I guess there's some sort of balances that one has to play here, which I think the Americans are playing reasonably well just at this moment, and this is a movable feast. What we don't want to do, nobody wants, and it's not in nobody's interest, that this thing then escalates into World War III. And you can see where the divide will be with sort of Russia and China and North Korea and so on one side. And what's interesting at this moment, it doesn't look like that the Iranians are getting too much support. So people, the right-thinking people in the West have understood this. My beef is a little bit with the British government. I'm happy to say it, and I said it last night. I mean, you have like a minister in the Foreign Office last night answering questions to me. It was only less than 2 years ago when that same minister was standing in opposition from Labour, standing up, calling for the proscription of the IRGC. I called him out last night. I said, when you were standing in opposition, called out for IRGC, you've got yourself into government, and all of a sudden you've changed your mind. So where is the problem? The problem seems to be, and this is a problem around the world, the advisors, the so-called advisors of these people. Who are these advisors inside the foreign ministries, the State Department and others? They've sat there for years, believing in a position is sacrosanct, not watching, really understanding what the sort of realpolitik of the whole world is. And they stick to these positions. It took us in the UK, I don't know, years to get them to prescribe Hezbollah. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't move. They didn't want to change. Can you believe that the IRGC is not being prescribed? But hey ho. And so I'm a bit concerned about the advisors, the advice that's given to these people. So I said this guy was so adamant that IRGC should be prescribed in opposition. All of a sudden, it's changed, and we know that the IRGC hasn't changed. And so we will continue to press this and push this. I've always said that eventually they will do it, but and the way that the Israeli military is working now, there may be no IRGC to prescribe soon enough, but and they're doing a remarkable job. No, I mean it's like this. We don't like changing position. This is what we've always believed in, without actually acknowledging what's going on. The IRGC are the head of the snake. They are the daddy, the children, if you like, the unruly children with Hamas and Hezbollah and everybody else. But it's all out of the IRGC. And if we actually prescribe the kids, why we're not doing the parent body, I have no idea. Specifically, it's about able to fundraise, and it would actually stop a lot of activity here, because there's no doubt, as we know, and MI5, many people have said it here in the UK, the activities of the IRGC in London is extensive. The British government has to choose: are they supporting the sort of peace-loving democracy Israel, who has been firing at military and nuclear installations, or the Ayatollah, who supports all these terrorist organizations we described. A choice has to be made, and I think you'll find the majority of people in the UK understand. And the argument that it's the same thing in Gaza, it doesn't work. And I think that people have understood that. I'm quite confident that the Iranian operation, call it whatever you like, will not last not last much longer, because I think what needs to be done is being done. And it's ironic and so on. I remember for many years people used to say to me, I'm going back 10 years, 15 years, and they would say to me, what about Iran? What about if Iran ever gets the nuclear bomb? And so forth. And I remember my answer, and I was not in the know of anything, but I always used to answer. I said, if the people who need to do whatever they need to do to stop Iran getting a nuclear bomb are not in Iran, then we might as well give up. I didn't know what the story was, but I just always believed in the ingenuity, the brilliance of the Israeli security forces, institutions. And when you sit back for a moment and analyze what has gone on in the last months, whether it be in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and that's freed the people of Lebanon from Hezbollah. They had held the country. What's gone on in the last days in Iran, and even a few months ago with other people being killed out in Iran, it's so comforting. But also the brilliance of the Israeli security services knows no bounds, and I think people admire that, understand it. So when things needed to be done, they would be done. And I'm quite convinced that things will be finished soon enough in Iran. And one hopes, because it's not for the people of Israel, it's not for the Prime Minister of Israel, not for anybody else, to choose the leadership in Iran. But I think what has happened now, pathway has become clear and free, so that people will be able to express themselves in Iran to do what you and I and others will believe is the right thing, and that will be the result of Israel. So Israel, once again, has led, and I think that's really important for people to acknowledge. And those who don't understand it, and there are plenty, well, I think last time I spoke with you, and I told the story, a very short story of and it works for this case too. When we were, it was about a year ago, we were voting in the parliament, and a senior former Secretary of State for Defense asked me, he said to me, what the hell are you doing in Gaza, as if it was my fault. And I talked about that. And I said, you were Secretary of State for Defense. What would you have done if 1,200 people had been butchered and murdered and on your watch in your country, in our country? What would you have done? I wouldn't let him answer. And I said to him again, I said, I said, that Hamas want to kill me because I'm a Jew. But you need to be clear. Once they're done with me, you're next. And this is the bit which often parts of the world, in the Western world, either don't want to see or don't see, is that this is about a different way of life. And it's about not just Jews. Jews are in the front line. Others are not far behind.
There's reports that the US is considering joining Israel militarily to dismantle the IRGC and the regime itself. In your eyes, should the US join the war?
How can I put it? If something needs to be done, where you need something more sophisticated, a heavier bomb, or something that needs to be done, which will clear away the ambition of creating a nuclear facility and nuclear warheads, then that should be done. Now, if you call that joining the war, you might. If you call that an act of self-defense, which I would, then that needs to be done. Look, it's no secret, because we've all been told it, that the ambition of the Islamic regime, if it was only about Israel, and of course they want to destroy Israel, if it was only about Israel, they would concentrate everything to ensure that whatever munitions, whatever ballistic missiles, and they had would be to deliver and get rid of Israel in their arms. But that's not been the case. I mean, it's quite clear what the Islamic regime have done, because they have got much other ballistic missiles go much further. Well, why? Why have they done that? Which will even reach America. So that's why it's self-defense. It's quite clear.
Lord Polak, thank you very much for joining us today on East to West.
Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye.